A UI table view cell inherits from its superclass, any subclass of UI table view cell, including this dog table view cell, inherits, just like any other class, the init function from its superclass. The one we want to use is style, UI table view cell.cell style, and reuse identifier, which is a string. It initializes a table view cell with a style and a reuse identifier and returns it to the caller. Interesting. Let's see what happens. Here's a really nice thing. We're overriding a superclass's init function. So let's just call that. We don't know how it works, but we don't have to. If I call this guy, I am initializing this table view cell in the way that every other table view cell has been initialized. This init has been called for your table view cells that you've created an interface builder, but you've never had to call it. This is the initializer. How do you all feel about that? Yes. So when you use a storyboard, like think about it. You're creating a cell. A cell is an instance of a specifically defined object. That object, which is a class, needs to be initialized unless you've set all its default values. So if you're going to initialize it, there must be an init function. Table view cells specifically have this type of init function that you can call. And now when we want to create an instance of this cell, we can just call dog table view cell and then open parens using this init function, just like we would initialize some struct called dogs, anything like that. Error says required initializer coder must be provided by subclass UI table view cell. Interesting. Required optional init coder. So if we create this from a coder, coder has not been implemented. Does anyone remember what these optional inits mean? Anyone want to take a guess? Tia. It may or may not be initialized. Okay. Interesting. I like that. Okay. What does this required keyword mean? Go here. UI table view. Required. I don't know. Where's the init? Init coder. Initializer. If the cell can be reused, you must pass in a reuse identifier. You should use the same reuse identifier. This guy's got no definition. Maybe it's something for a view? Man. It inherited this init as a view. Oh man, what about this UI responder? Yeah, I would say it is giving you the ability to potentially initialize it. But if this doesn't work, then it's going to stop the program. So this is unit 1 stuff. I'm going to kind of say if that didn't make any sense to you, just like translate auto resizing mask, just remember this needs to be there. If you are using any views initializers, you'll need this optional initializer as well. That's just built into the definition of UI view, which UI table view cell inherits from which your custom class inherits from. I want to keep going. If we've got a label here, let's do this programmatically. Let's see. For right now, what do we know about this label? Do we want to do anything with it? We'll eventually fill some values, but like when we create the label on the cell, is there anything we need to do? Tell it where it needs to go. Okay, I think that's a good idea. Let's do that, I don't know, in the initializer. Because that's its relationship with its superview. So we're definitely going to have to say self.view.add_subview, which self.content.add_subview, and it's going to be read label. And then we're going to configure the labels constraints. But in here, if we're just talking about that label, I'm just going to say, this is a label. I'm just going to return that label for now. We could do some stuff to customize it. We don't have to, though. What do you all think of that right now? Okay. Now that we have that all set up, we just want to figure out, we'll figure out the constraints later once we get this loading so we can see what to do. We want to figure out how to register that class, not as a nib, but as this dog table view cell, which is creating all of its user interface stuff programmatically. What are some ideas? Yeah, what are some ideas? If you remember, this register thing was, when we had a storyboard, that register thing was built into having prototype cells. But now that we don't have prototype cells in this table view, we had to register the XIB file that we had put that interface builder stuff in. But now we don't even have any interface builder. And so we still need to register some cell, but we're not registering anything to do with interface builder. We're just registering some class that's going to programmatically create all of the UI. And so I know I'm going to use this register, but I don't know how to get that stuff working. Sunny? We want to create instance. Interesting. I'm going to say I don't actually, because what this register wanted was the class of the thing I'm going to use and the reuse identifier. Do you want to know something really annoying? If we are registering it here, what we were doing in our storyboard or our XIB files when we were setting that reuse identifier was we were declaring that in the interface builder file. When we are registering this cell, which is of a certain type, at the point where we register it, we get to say what the reuse identifier is. That's not saved anywhere in the definition of that cell, but instead we are saying, hey, for this table view, if you want to go and get something called, what? Anyway, if you want to go and get this type of table view cell, when you dequeue it, look for this reuse identifier. We're assigning the reuse identifier here. It used to be assigned in Interface Builder. Now that we're not using it at all, we are just setting it up here. For cell reuse identifier dog cell. Go away. Do you want me to repeat that? I'm going to do it real quick. You're setting up the reuse identifier when you register it here. It's not set anywhere else. This could be completely arbitrary. This could be Liana's frown cell. This could be Liana's happy cell. Happy cell. You're setting it up. That's what you are doing. It's yours for you to use in whatever way you want. And all you have to do is down here, make sure you are dequeuing that thing with that identifier. So, Liana's happy cell. They're dequeuing you. It's got some label. Let's run this and see what happens. I feel like I'm actually going to do this in 20 minutes. Cool. We've got some cells. That's pretty cool. What do we want in those cells? We want those labels. We did have a label, but like someone said, we need to set up its constraints. So let's say configure constraints. The function will create. And I'm going to be really lazy here. Hope you're all excited. First of all, I'm going to move this down so that it's in its own area. I'm just going to say label dot center. So annoying. What do you call it? Breed label. Breed label dot center y anchor, which is the vertical center of the frame. Constraint dot is equal to self dot content view dot center y anchor with no constant. Set that as active. It's true. Then I'm going to just do all this stuff again for the center x anchor. What am I doing? If you could express it in plain language, Hildy. I'm doing constraints. And what am I, like, what are these constraints doing? There are only two. Normally I have to set x, y, height, and width. So the important part here is this center y and center x anchor. If we look at the description, it says a layout anchor representing the vertical center of the view's frame. And so what I'm saying is the breed label's vertical center is going to be equal to the cell's content view's vertical center. So like in the y position, this label is going to be directly in the middle. And then the second constraint is just saying the same for the x position. And so our label is going to be perfectly centered within the view of the cell. I know it's like a weird way to read through that. But the main thing is to read like what the anchors are, which type of anchor you've got. Let's see if that works. Failed. Oh no. It's a non-zero exit code. That was really helpful. Cell was modified during the build. Cool. Let's not worry about that. Oh man, now they're gone altogether. Let's read the errors, guys. Make a symbolic breakpoint. I'm going to make a real one. So here's what it's telling me. Yep. It's saying unable to simultaneously satisfy constraints. There's something called an NS auto resizing mask layout constraint, which is that thing that we said we don't want. We set it to false all the time. Your views try to lay out how these things should go automatically. But we wanted to set our constraints manually. And so there are conflicting constraints between what this resizing mask thinks it should do and what we told the view to do with our label. So again, the message, the important thing here is unable to simultaneously satisfy constraints, which means there's conflicting constraints. And the really, really nice thing is that usually has to do with that resizing mask trying to do stuff for us. But let's see. Ah, there they are. Neat. So now that that resizing mask isn't trying to do that, I can just set those two constraints. My label appears right in the middle. We've got those things. Without any XIB file, you can make a view controller that does all that. What are some questions? Rob. Yes, the translates auto resizing mask, blah, blah. Translates auto resizing mask into constraints. I'm just going to put this in our Slack channel. I'm going to pin it. Any view cool. When you're using constraints, do that stuff. Yes. This is something that tries to happen in the background with your constraints. And for any view, it's set to true by default. Okay. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Hey.
I just wanted to let you know.
Oh, hold on. Let me